So if you follow this channel for any length of time, you know that a lot of my samples and a lot of my background is obviously in wedding photography, but you don't see a lot of that actual content on my channel as much as me talking about lenses and talking about the gear I use and things to accomplish that. So I've had a few requests over the years to actually show a lot more of my work. And typically I put this on Patreon. So if this is something you're interested in, I have a ton of other videos and just countless other ceremonies and speeches and portrait sessions and things like that that are all this kind of behind the scenes stuff that are on my Patreon. Obviously, there'll be a link down below to that if you're interested in that. But today I wanted to show an entire wedding ceremony from beginning to end. This is a small kind of intimate wedding. It's in the Tetons, obviously. And I wanted to kind of watch it while I'll do some commentary on it, tell you kind of what I'm thinking and what I'm doing as I go. And hopefully that'll give you a little bit better perspective into how I go about photographing things and what the actual output of my work is in context. So this is just the beginning of it, giving a little bit more context to what's going on here.
Oh my gosh, that dress is incredible. Yeah. Oh yeah.
The beginning also is me turning everything on, so that's where you miss out on the very, very beginnings of this whole thing.
Yes. Amazing.
So she obviously got ready in this Sprinter van, so getting a few of these little things. Here's your dad taking photos.
That's why we paid him the money.
It's all right. He wants to be part of the moment in that way too.
You don't have to worry about the dress.
I know a lot of people talk about how they don't want guests to be taking photos and things like that, and if that's how someone wants to enjoy the moment, I'm totally fine with that. So I often kind of re-give people permission because my clients often are like, oh, shoot, sorry, and then I kind of encourage people to. It's fine. So obviously walking backwards and then trying to get more of the context of where they're going here.
Fantastic. Terrain is very training, yes.
Moving through here, and then could kind of see where they're going there, in between the two of them. So grabbed one of those. And then I'm kind of telling her where to be walking because she hasn't seen this setup yet. Because Justin, the groom, who's an amazing photographer himself, actually I'll put a link to his work in the description because, yeah, he does amazing work, especially on film. Now, one of the things I'm doing here is photographing these, I believe, on the A7R5 as well as the A7 IV. Those cameras, this is before I had the Leica M11. These cameras have a little bit more dynamic range, and as you can see, it's a really dynamic scene, and so I wanted to make sure that I had as much dynamic range as possible. So I'm not shooting as much with the Leica M10s that I had than I would typically in that kind of situation. As you can see, I also have these on a strap. This time I'm using the Clever Supply Co. dual camera harness. I kind of switch back and forth between that and the Holdfast. So one of the things I do as well is as people kind of come down the aisle, one of the first things I do is go back and try to get a few wide shots. And then this is also with my Hasselblad 500 CM, I believe on Gold 200. And we will see what film it is once I do it. And here's me forgetting to take out the dark slide because I do that way too often, unfortunately. Yep, Kodak Gold 200. One of the things you can also see is the relationship between the couple and the horizon there, because it's such a hard line between the trees and the foliage. So I want to either, put them above or below, or find a way for that line to intersect them in a way that's not distracting. This is also kind of like the intro to the ceremony, so I know that there's not going to be a lot of action happening. So this is where I'm going to back up and get a few kind of wide photos to give more context to what's going on. As you can tell here as well by the shutter sounds, Definitely taking more photos than I'm delivering, which obviously makes sense. There you go, backing up and getting another one with the Hasselblad. You'll see that I think I only take 3 photos with that camera during the ceremony, but it's just enough to kind of get the feel of everything and add it into the collection. So one of the things I did, just for versatility's sake, you'll see that that's a larger lens, and so you can watch my review on this particular thing, is that Samyang 75 or Samyang 35 to 150 f2 to 2.8. Wasn't planning on using this lens for this wedding a lot, but it ended up being really, really useful. And then these photos, I believe, are on the Leica M10 with the 28mm Summilux, or Summicron f2. Yep, you can hear that shutter. That's the Leica M10 for sure. So here's, yeah, another one of the probably 3 photos I think I took on the Hasselblad here. I really like these too because you can see a little bit of the foliage in the foreground, as well as putting them kind of in that area between the mountains, and then making sure that the horizon isn't intersecting with them in a weird way. I do find that Samyang 35 to 150 to be super, super useful for ceremonies because you can back up and get like a 35mm perspective and then zoom in on something like this and get a tighter photo for obviously speeches and things. Typically, I actually use like a 85, 90, something like that. I also have the 135 from Sony, but this has kind of replaced it in a lot of ways, even though the 135 is just absolutely incredible. And then with these, you're kind of just reaction hunting. So I'm just trying to wait for like a good reaction in these things, and taking a few just in case anyway. But you can see that some of these are showing up, some of these aren't, because these are actually when the photos that I'm delivering are popping up on the screen. And getting the little details and trying to frame it well in between those things. You can definitely see how windy it was and how the sun is obviously really, really high in the sky, so it makes getting them in a good spot where they're not getting too harsh of shadows, and trying to make sure that my processing and angles and things are making it so it's not too harsh. I think I actually have the GoPro on top of, yeah, it's on top of my Leica M10 that has the 28mm on it. So that's where you can kind of see it bouncing around and stuff as I walk. And actually, if you want to see how I mount that on my cameras, I'll try to put another video up there about how I do that. So I just did another video on my Patreon about like wedding formulas, about how I go about making sure that I'm doing consistent stuff that opens me up to do more things creatively afterwards. And one of those is just how I photograph ceremonies. So how every time I photograph people walking down, how I get the details, how I get a wide shot, when I get those things, even how I do speeches. So, you know, getting 1 or 2 photos of each couple kind of giving their vows to each other, and then making sure that I take a moment to get a few reactions from parents and family members and things like that as well when I'm in those spots. So this is probably, I think this is them kind of ending their vows. So I try to make sure that I have enough time to get individual photos of them from the sides, and then some photos of them kind of straight on. And then after the vows, usually that kind of means that they're going to do some rings, typically. And then that usually means after they do rings, that's kind of the last thing before if they're going to do a kiss or whatever. These are all obviously for like Western ceremonies. Because there are obviously tons of other cultural ways to do it, and I've done hundreds and hundreds of weddings of other cultural things, and knowing how to do those is also incredibly important. So if you are getting married or you are a wedding photographer that is going to do a wedding, especially for a culture that you might not be as familiar with, making sure that you know kind of the roadmap is incredibly important. So definitely something I would suggest, either getting somebody, if you are getting married, that is going to know those things, or if you are getting someone that might not know those things as well, making sure you are being really, really good about giving people a heads up of how those things go about. So the photographer's not caught off guard and they know where to be in the right places. And also this is me kind of figuring out, all right, we're getting here. I'm going to make sure that I'm kind of setting these things up. So you can see I'm getting ready and making a camera available to be able to shoot one-handed while I have another one getting set up, because I know they're probably going to, do the rings right here and then they're going to kiss. So I'm kind of pre-setting up cameras and making sure that I like my composition and my framing and stuff like that, because I know that it's about to kind of be that big momentous end of the ceremony. So I've already pre-focused the other camera so I can pop it up and start taking those photos as well.
Yeah!
Obviously you can hear me kind of cheering as well. Definitely am not a completely silent person on a wedding day. And this is going to be a little bit different as well, because as you saw getting in there, you kind of had to snake through a few of these bushes and things like that. Also, for what it's worth, this isn't a national park, but we did have permission to go kind of like into these little trail areas and do this ceremony. And if you are doing a ceremony in a national park and you're a photographer, just make sure that that is something that is allowed. This is a specific area where we were allowed to do that. So knowing that that is available is something that's incredibly important, because you're definitely not allowed to just go off trail or into big areas or fields at all times. Make sure you have complete ability to do that.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Well, thanks so much for watching. That was a complete wedding ceremony from front to beginning, from front to end, I guess, from front to back. If you're interested in more of my wedding related stuff, I have another one about shooting film at a wedding in Amangiri right here. And then if you want to watch my video on the Samyang 35 to 150, because I talked a lot about that, you can check that out up here, and I will see you in one of those videos.